The quest for self-validation and the obsessive need to seek approval from others are not uncommon themes among the inhabitants of the lands between.
You are fated, it seems, to die in obscurity.
It is a realm where the tension between one's very own ambitions and the inner demons that drive these souls will usually lead them to the brink of madness.
One day, you'll get what's coming.
Those that feel this way often experience ridicule and pressure from others, dreaming of the day where they can prove to those around them that they are something more, something greater than just a mere blemish on the lands between.
To stand before the Elden Ring, to become Elden Lord, what a sad state of affairs.
Hoping to reach new heights of power, these souls strive to earn the respect and strength that they feel they deserve. But one man in particular would go to extreme lengths to reach this goal, lengths that few before him have ever achieved.
Put these foolish ambitions to rest.
This weak and tormented soul was none other than the self-proclaimed Lord of Stormveil Castle.
Godric the Golden.
His castle lies upon the cliff to Limgrave's northwest, but I suspect you know that well enough already.
Godric was a distant descendant of the Golden Lineage, a bloodline that can be traced all the way back to its beginning, with the marriage of Queen Marika the Eternal and Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. Maintaining only a distant relation to Marika's line, his divine blood was sorely diluted, and he was viewed as the weakest among his demigod kin.
Despite being the blood of Godfrey, first Elden Lord, he's a grotesque old fool grasping for power.
And yet, despite this, after Marika shattered the Elden Ring, he was able to inherit the Great Rune from the center, also known as the Anchor Ring. Godric, a figure who was twisted by his own insecurities and his relentless need to prove himself to all those around him, would only ever serve to be his downfall. His actions, born from this desperate pursuit of recognition, caused him to descend into a horrifying madness. Many viewed him as a weak and pitiful man, mocking him at every turn, so much so that even his own subjects began to despise him, and those closest to him began to question who, or rather what, he had become.
I am the Lord of all that is golden.
But for Godric, these acts of ridicule only pushed him further and further into madness. He felt that the best way to combat this was to commit gruesome acts of mutilation and torture, targeting anyone unfortunate enough to cross his path, all in a desperate attempt to live up to his bloodline and hoping to earn the respect that he felt he deserved.
Mighty dragon, thou the true born heir.
But just how did Godric, the self-proclaimed Golden, come to claim Stormveil Castle as his own? This descendant of the infamous Golden Lineage, a bloodline notorious for producing some of the strongest and most respected beings in the lands between, was forced to commit such foul acts and viewed as nothing more than a weak and feeble man. Godric's dark tale unfolds against the backdrop of Stormveil Castle, a mighty castle perched along the cliffs of Limgrave. Once, long ago, it had been ruled by a long-forgotten king, during a time when warhawks ruled the skies. Legends whisper of a battle waged here by Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, as he marched south to Limgrave under the banner of the Golden Order. The true history for this ancient conflict remains a mystery. However, some would believe that Godfrey confronted the Storm King within the castle, ultimately defeating him. As a result of this conflict, the castle was left empty of a ruler for generations, standing only as a hollow shell of its former glory. Many generations later, during a period of turmoil, the Shattering took place, an event which sent the lands between into a long and bloody war. One of the individuals to partake in this war was General Radahn, who at one point supposedly led his forces to lay siege to the royal capital. Whilst the exact history of what happened seems lost to time, some say that amidst the chaos of battle, Godric seized the opportunity to flee the city, carrying with him a multitude of treasures in the process. He concealed himself among the city's women that were fleeing the chaos, using an item known as the Mimic's Veil, an artifact that once belonged to Queen Marika herself. This item granted the wearer the ability to alter their appearance, allowing Godric to change his form and escape the city unnoticed. From here, Godric and his followers retreated south, seeking refuge within Stormveil Castle, where he boldly declared himself as Godric the Golden, Lord of Stormveil and all that is golden. This proclamation was likely driven by his golden lineage and his ambition for power, giving him a false sense of entitlement. Godric was already believed to be a weak old fool grasping for power, and his flight from the royal capital, combined with him now in hiding from General Radahn, only fueled those beliefs even further. He knew deep down that he had to do something to change this view. As the war raged on, Godric, already a disgrace in the eyes of the land's inhabitants, discovered the grotesque act of grafting. The process of grafting involved dismembering the limbs and body parts of other beings, both creatures and humans alike, and fusing them onto one's own body in order to gain their strength and power. It is speculated that Godric learned of this forbidden art from his kinsman, Godric the Grafted, another scion of the Golden Lineage, who once harbored ambitions of becoming Elden Lord himself. During one of the many sieges of Lindau, Godric was captured and imprisoned by Dragon Knight Kristoff, and for achieving this feat, Knight Kristoff was able to earn himself an Erdtree burial, one of the highest honors that a knight could receive. Godric, inspired now by Godric, dispatched his soldiers on Tarnished hunts, capturing anyone they could find and subjecting them to gruesome experiments, some of which appeared to be on children, and those that were found worthy were dismembered, ready to be grafted. Behind the walls of Stormveil, many unspeakable horrors began to unfold, all driven by Godric's obsessive need for validation, approval, and strength. Godric idolized Godfrey, so much so that it became concerning just how much he yearned for his ancestor to bear witness to his feats. Wielding an axe with the figure of a lion, the symbol of Godfrey, and even fitted his army with the crests of the Golden Lineage, such as axes and depictions of Serosh, the Beast Regent. He even displayed a portrait of Godfrey in the halls of Stormveil Castle, the very halls where Godric would perform his grafting, all so that Godfrey could witness what he had become. Despite dubbing himself Godric the Golden, he was the object of ridicule and scorn. His subjects despised him for who he had become, and the people across Limgrave openly mocked him, tarnishing his name even more, eventually dubbing him as Godric the Grafted. The exact timeline of when Godric began to graft himself is not made clear. However, there are two main theories surrounding Godric that each stem from his confrontation with Malenia, Blade of Mikola. Malenia was another individual who played a pivotal role during the War of the Shattering. At one point, she marched her army of Cleanrot Knights south in order to confront General Radahn in a fierce battle that would later dictate the outcome of the war. However, during her march, she passed through the lands of Limgrave and Stormveil Castle, where it is believed that Godric insulted and mocked Malenia, so much so that a battle erupted between the two. The first theory is that Godric had already grafted himself prior to his confrontation with Malenia, and because of this, Godric deluded himself into believing that he was now a formidable being with the power to rival his demigod kin. And yet, when confronted by Malenia, what followed was a short, swift, and very one-sided battle, with Malenia defeating Godric so badly that he began to beg for his life at her feet, something that his ancestors would never have done, further showing his true nature and weakness to all those in attendance. This only further shattered his reputation and pushed him further into madness, with paranoid thoughts of what others may think of him. The second theory is that Godric grafted himself after his defeat to Malenia. Having been beaten by her so badly and made to beg for his life, he was forced to face the reality that he was nothing more than a weak and feeble man who desired power. With this defeat, perhaps Godric felt that the only way he could return to his true home and become a stronger being that Godfrey would be proud of was for him to indulge in the act of grafting. Regardless of this, the outcome was one and the same for Godric. Disgraced and broken, he retreated into his castle, haunted by his relentless desire to prove himself as a great demigod, just like his ancestors. After this, Godric continued to hide deep within the castle, still in pursuit of power through grafting. That was until one day, the player Tarnished arrived at Stormveil, where the two encountered each other in a fight to the death. Godric is sorely defeated by the player, crying out for Godfrey to witness him as the battle rages on. And yet, upon defeat, Godric cries out once more, and for the last time, proclaiming himself a lord, showing that even with his dying breath, he is still driven by his desire to prove himself to anybody that will listen.
I am the Lord of all that is golden, and one day we'll return together to our home, bathed in rays of gold.
Was Godric pushed to the brink of madness by those around him? Being the weakest member of the Golden Lineage, perhaps he felt that he had to live up to his demigod ancestors, with the pressure mounting that he was not and never will be good enough. Or maybe he was just another weak and cruel man with weak and cruel ambitions, blinded by his own arrogance and self-entitlement. With the passing of Godric, Stormveil Castle once again witnesses the fall of its lord, and as time marches forward, Nefeli Lu, a descendant of Horalu, chieftain of the Badlands, can emerge as the new ruler of Limgrave. Should the player Tarnished encounter the ashes of the Stormhawk King within the Chapel of Anticipation, they can offer these ashes to Nefeli at the Roundhold table, where she will gladly receive them. From here, she goes on to cross paths with a man named Kenneth Height, a man who deems her as a worthy heir to Limgrave, a role which she accepts, stating that it reminds her of her home. Nefeli, who is now the new lord of Stormveil Castle, pledges her aid to the Tarnished in the event that they become Elden Lord, and as a result of this, Stormveil Castle stands witness to a new ruler within its walls, someone who is no doubt more worthy and secure than that of its previous owner.